Okay, so when we were talking the other day about the histogram, all right, some people remembered it, some people didn't. So this particular document, I'm not 100% completely through with all the content that I have to put into it, but as soon as it's done, you all will get it. All right. So this is really to serve as, you know, that revision that some of you may need, and to give us the practice that we would be needing with daily as descending. Oh, all right. Just give me a second, right? Um, Dominique, she can't join through the link that I sent you.
I don't know. I can share and yeah, it's on a passport. I don't know if you can.
Okay. All right. So give me a second, right? I'm gonna get back the information from this morning and send it to you, so you could send Jaylee the info. Okay, sorry about all that. Dominique, I sent it on WhatsApp, so you could probably forward it to Jaylee for me, right? Thank you. Yes, Cursa, nice child, Cursa. So let's continue, right? Um, like I said, this is just revision, and I really just want everybody to be on the same page. So in here, you will find all the little bits and pieces of information pertaining to histogram in particular, and later down, you will meet the notes about the frequency polygon, which is also called the histograph, and you will also learn how to find the mode from your histogram. So I'm not sure if everybody would have been familiar with obtaining the mode from the histogram, and familiar with working with the frequency polygon. But this document, like I said, is all for the purpose of that revision. So let's get into the histogram part of things, right? So there are certain things that you all would know about the histogram, certain things that you might have been able to recollect just by hearing the word histogram. So some people would remember that there's a key difference between the bar chart and the histogram, and that difference is that the bar chart. Okay, no problems. All right, so yeah, so the key thing to remember with the bar chart versus the histogram is that your histogram, the bars are all connected. So in the image that I have here, it's a little small image, but this is an example of what a histogram looks like. All right, all your bars are connected versus the bar chart. All right, so sorry about that. Okay, so side by side, we have the vertical bar chart, which it resembles, and we have the histogram. And we can tell, looking at the histogram, looking at the vertical bar chart, the bar chart, you can tell there are some really tiny spaces, but there are spaces, all right? And as I was saying the other day, you use the bar chart specifically for discrete data or categorical data, as that case may be. Now, the histogram, while we'll use it for group data, continuous data, it's not to say that discrete data can't be continuous, not continuous. What am I saying? It can't be grouped. All right, that's what I want to say. So discrete data can also be grouped, and you can use a histogram for discrete data as well. But we're looking strictly at the group data aspect of things and how we construct our histogram once provided with grouped data. All right. So for that, I have this example here. All right. So I don't have a diagram done. We're going to work on this, and let me just enable share screen for you all. Annotation. Okay, I think everybody should be able to share though. All right, I'll just double check it. All right. Anyway, so we're going to work on doing a histogram right now. So the first thing, obviously, you will have to have data. Now, it doesn't. Sorry about all this noise this morning. I don't know what it is today. Anyway, so as I was saying, the data, once you have your data, whether it be grouped already, as is the case with this table, or they give you raw data, you can create your classes, group your data, etc. All right. But the idea is that once you have your data and you have it grouped, you can start working on creating your histogram. Now, before you actually start drawing up your histogram, you need to know about the upper and lower class boundaries. Anybody can recall what the upper class boundary and the lower class boundary refer to?
The highest and the lowest number in a class.
All right, so that was Rihanna. The highest and lowest value in a class. That was what you just said, right?
Yes, miss.
All right. Anybody has anything they want to add to that? Anybody agrees, disagrees? Anybody do the homework? All right. Silencio. Okay. So when you have your classes created, all right, you have limits. Somebody just now, give me a second. Highest value in an interval. Yes. Very good. So precisely as Rihanna was saying, I wanted to see if people did their homework. So yes, as Rihanna was saying, it is the highest, your upper class boundary will be your highest value in a class interval, and your lower class boundary will be your lowest value in a class interval. All right. Now, when you're going to create your histogram, okay, I seen somebody in chat. All right, no problem. So eventually, I would like for everybody to grow out of this shyness at some point in time, so we can all have a nice little discussion, right? Once you can, Ashley, your hand is up. Would you like to say something?
Oh no, I said that by accident.
Lol, so many people raise their hand by accident in Zoom. All right. So, okay, we can identify the upper and lower class boundaries. You're ready to start creating your histogram now?
Yes, miss.
Nice. So what's the first thing we're gonna do? Once we identify the upper class and lower class boundaries, we need to draw up the axes and we need to put the respective labels on each axis. So let's go. What goes on the x-axis, anybody? What am I putting on the x-axis? Oh my goodness, y'all, I can't. All right, so somebody said boundaries. All right, so yes, boundaries go somewhere. And everybody was rushing to speak just now. I just couldn't hear anything clearly. So I mean, like, somebody, just one person accidentally raise your hand again. So we could find out who we're putting on the x-axis, who we're putting on the y-axis.
It puts in the class interval on the x-axis.
Nice. Lindsay, I see your hand up. What would you like to tell me?
Miss, I had the answer for the y-axis.
Tell me what goes on the y-axis. Somebody told me about the x already.
What's the frequency?
Frequency. Good. So you all go ahead and draw it up, all right? If you have graph paper handy, it will create a nice, neat bar chart, but you could sketch if you like, or just draw it in your notebook, all right? Mika. All right. So I'm just going to do a little doodle in Zoom because later on I will do my nice accurate.
Excuse me, miss.
Yes, listening.
Do we have to show you after? Oh,
Yes, that would be nice and appreciated.
okay.
Lindsay, you can't draw. All right, Carissa, no problem. Yes, I am recording the session. So in advance, I'm telling you all from today onward. I just forgot last week, but from today onward, all sessions will be recorded. All sessions will be made available to you all as soon as I get the video up. All right. So, oh, okay, no problem. No problem, Lindsay. So, hi. All right. I'm gonna start drawing, all right? So ignore my neighbors in the background, please, because I have some very nice neighbors. They like to talk real loud. The dogs twice as loud, and the people who's passing the road just as obnoxious at times. Yeah, trust me. My neighborhood is quite filled with interesting characters. So I'm gonna start my doodling. So first of all, I said I'm gonna start with my axes, right? So on my paper, I'm going to draw me a pair of axes intersecting at a point. So next, I'm going to label my axes, all right? So first of all, my x-axis, as you all have rightly identified, boundaries are going to go on an axis, right? And when we talk about the x-axis, we're talking about our class intervals. So this is where we're going to represent weight. So weight. Yeah, I didn't put the units on the table, but it will be kilograms, right? Some people having some internet issues because of the weather. And today was definitely, well, it still is not a nice weather predicament. Okay, so from here, like I was saying, on my x-axis, I'm going to put my class intervals, right? Now, what value do I start with on my x-axis? What should be the first value that I put?
0.
0. So we're going to put the 0 right here, right? Okay, now that I have my 0, what's the next value I'm gonna put on the axis?
5. 5.
5?
Yeah.
5? 5. Why are we using 5? Anybody? Come on. I know there are lots of brilliant minds in this class, and some people just, wow, I now realize my line real straight. Small thing. Okay. If my class intervals are going on my x-axis, people, I want to use an appropriate scale. We agree with that, right? Yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
Nice. So, somebody mentioned 5. Yeah, you'd wanna use probably intervals of 5. But here's my next question: do I have anybody whose weight is under 50 kilograms? Do I have anybody who's under 50 kilograms from my data collected? No. So we don't necessarily have to start all the way from 0 to 5 and then go 10, 15, 20, 25. You know what I mean? All right. You all have ever heard of a broken scale?
Yes, ma'am.
Nice. So when you use a broken scale, that allows you to jump from 0 to 50. All right. So I am going to start at 50 because this is the lowest possible weight that any person that I've collected data for will have. So I'm going to start at 50. So we all okay with that? Just a second. My chat is okay. All right. Just as I closed the chat. Sorry. Yeah, just in case you've never heard of broken scale just means that I am anyway, broken scale just simply means that you're going to create a break between 0 and your first value on your scale, and that allows you to start later down, so you don't have to go in numerical. You don't have to go in numerical order from 0 all the way up. Okay, so we're starting at 50. What should we use? Okay, anyway, so I decided to adjust my scale simply because like I couldn't fit everything on the axis just now. So I used a bigger interval instead. I decided to use intervals of 10 rather than 5. Now, that's not to say you can't use 5. It's totally up to you. But I chose to use 10 simply because I want to accommodate all the numbers in my space. So I'm going to meet again and I'll just continue, right? You all would be familiar with the process, so you could continue from there, all right? Now, back to what I was going to say with the histogram, right? So Jewel did hers, and it looks really good. The only thing I had to tell her is like the little space that we need between the 0 and the lower class boundary that she started with. All right. So let me just double check and make sure that I tell Jewel the correct thing, because I can't remember the value that I saw as the lower class boundary for hers. But Jewel has the right idea and she's done already, which is good. At least, you know, it sort of refreshed her memory so that she was able to do the histogram quite well. Okay, so actually, Jewel, on your diagram, your histogram, just do one little adjustment, which is, like I said, put the space between where you put your first lower class limit. All right. So your lower class limit for 50, it will actually be 49.5, right? So
What? Repeat it again.
okay, so you're on the right track. All I needed to do is change the lower class boundary that you started with. So you know your
what?
X,
49.5?
right? Yes, you will have to start at 49.5 because I think it's looking like 39.5 that I'm seeing on the axis. All right.
Okay.
So yeah, and once you do that, you should be fine. Like I said, just put a little space and then put it 49.5 and then draw it. So yeah. Okay, so that's one person. What about the rest of us? Because, come on. I'm sure you all would be just fine with doing this. So there's a lot about, like, lots of details about the histogram that you'll need to know, because one of the things that you have to remember when you deal with the histogram, no longer will you be looking at the height of the bars for the frequencies. All right? The frequency will actually come from the size, well, the area of your bar, because the area of the bar is proportional to the frequency of that particular class interval. All right? So that is why it is so important to remember when you're setting up your histogram, your x-axis in particular, you use the proper limits. The next thing is this. All your bars need to have the same width. All right? When we think about the histogram, always remember that your width for each class interval will be the same. All right? Because if we look at the data that we have in the table here, you can tell what is the width of each class, right? Anybody remembers how you calculate the width of a class? Anybody?
What's the width of what?
How do you find the width of a class interval?
Miss,
Mm-hmm.
the upper boundary subtracting the lower boundary.
That's it. That's all there is to it. Find the difference between your upper and your lower class boundary. And for all our classes, we can tell each one has the same width. So that's one thing that you need to remember. When you do your histogram, you will have the same width for each bar. And that's why drawing the bars, so important to make sure that you have the right boundaries used. Okay? So over here on my y-axis, so I was very much far off from what I wanted to do today. But anyway, your y-axis, you're going to put in all your frequencies, all right? So you could use intervals of 5 because this one goes up to 35, all right? So we go from 5 straight up to probably like 40. You don't have to go all the way to 40, but once you have all your frequencies and you can accommodate all your frequencies on the y-axis, you stop at your value, and then from there you're going to take the information from the table and you're going to start creating your bars for your histogram. All right, so let me just put in this. Anybody else finished with their histogram and want to share it? See. Oh, Diliana. Let me see what Diliana did. Yes, Dilly, you're so artistic. It's very beautiful. Anybody else would like to share? Hold on now. Anybody else? Anybody else? Y'all. Okay, fine. I see what it is. I want to see me doodle, right? Fine. But in the meantime, I hope the rest of you all are actually practicing doing your histogram, because either way, whether or not I do mine's nice and pretty, you're gonna need to do it. All right? This was just practice because I want to put up a few questions for you all to do over the weekend, just to get practice. Oh, Brianna now coming in. Just a second, I'm gonna check the chat. Yes. You're gonna be joining Histogram, Calissa, the one that's the data that we have here. You're gonna draw that one. All right. And Jada, that's not a problem. I know everybody internet given some trouble today. So the session gonna be recorded. The parts where I was mute and all the noise, I'll do my best to clean that up and at least put this up with all the information you need. All right, so don't worry. Okay, like I was saying, here ideally I'm going to be using a broken scale. Now, I know some places, some sites that you may see doing the histogram and stuff, they don't do the limit on the axis, the x-axis, but ideally you should do the lower class limit. All right. Okay, I'm gonna check now. So that was a person who just sent me. Oh, look. You all are such good children, you see? Oh, look at that. Alyssa, lovely. It looks lovely. Let me download this. Let me see Calissa. Oh, look at that. We have some nice talent in this class, you know. Ashley.
Miss, when time runs out, do we have to join back or we gonna finish by then?
Yeah, we could join back, but it would just be to wrap up because this discussion. All right. So actually, let me join my bars and stuff while I still have Zoom up. All right. So all I want to say is for joining bars, you're going to be using your frequency and the class interval to help you out.
Bye.
Right. So over here, when I'm drawing the bars, I will get a thing. Right. So between 50 and 60, I will insert a bar that goes up to about 14. All right. That's not a really good, accurate representation. But all I'm going to do is between each class interval, I'm going to put a bar to represent that frequency. All right. So like I was saying, mine is not very accurate because Zoom. I just doodling. All right. Ideally, again, the bars need to be connected. All right. So when I actually finish the notes, you will have a nice completed histogram in here to see what it looks like. All right. So when we cut off, you'll take the same link to rejoin, and I'll rejoin with you all in a little bit. All right. Because I'll be waiting for it to record the meeting and convert the video. I might join back in 2 minutes, about 2-3 minutes. All right. Okay, so starting back from the top, right? We're looking right now at Jewel's histogram, and she did a really good job. Now, on her x-axis, notice that we have 49.5, 59.5, all the way up to 109.5. Now, I was saying that the terms that I asked you all to go look up the definitions of, those things are really important. And the reason why they're important is because when you have to do a histogram, there's a difference between using the boundaries of the class versus the limits. All right. And this is the reason why. You see, if I were to use the class boundaries, I had 50 to 59, 60 to 69, 70 to 79, 80, going so forth. My question is this: 59 and 60, would you have any connection between 59 and 60? Can I put a bar that ends at 59 on a bar that starts at 60? Can I do that? Anybody?
No, miss.
No, that's right.
No.
So that is why you have to get the limits instead on your axis, because the limit is what will actually help you make that connection between the two classes. So based on the definitions, anybody could tell me what is the class limit, the upper, well, your lower class. You have your lower class boundary, upper class boundary, but then you have class limits. Anybody can tell me what is the class limit and what is the difference between the boundaries versus the classes?
Miss, what's the question?
Okay, so there's a difference between the class boundaries and the class limits. All right. So can anybody tell me what I mean by class limit and what is the difference between a class limit versus the boundary? Anybody can tell me?
Miss, the boundary is the size of the gap between classes. The limit is either For example, the lower class limit is the smallest data value and the upper class limit is the largest data value.
Right.
And
so,
the boundaries is the things in between them, the values that you get when you subtract.
all right. So Jaylee was onto something, right? But I think he got a little, like the two overlap a little too much, so he gets a little confused. So here's how we're gonna make sense of this now. All right. So like you were saying, there's something to do with the smallest value and the highest value, etc. All right. And when we talk about limits, the class limits, whether it be the upper or the lower limits, the class limits will tell me that my values have to fit within these values. All right. Whereas the boundaries are the actual values that exist in that class. So, like I was asking when I started off, I said, I don't have anybody with a weight that is less than 50. All right. I don't have anybody with a weight that is less than 50. The first weight that I probably would have taken would have fallen in the 50 to 59 category. And that is the reason why we have the classes set up in that way. So anybody who weighs anything 50 to 59 inclusive, they fall in that first class. But when it comes to actually representing the data on the histogram, I can't do the classes 50 to 59, 60 to 69, etc., and get them to connect, because at that point in time, it will come like I have distinct classes where they don't overlap, they don't connect. There's no value in common for me to just connect them all. But when it comes to the limit, all right, although you wouldn't have somebody with a weight of 59.5, because you did not collect people with weights between, how to put it, you didn't collect anybody's weights accurate to one decimal place then. All right. Your limits define where your classes should exist. And this is why you have to use your limits instead, because that's where you would be able to create that connectedness between each of your class intervals. All right. So while yes, you collected data for 50 to 59, so you notice I should label the bars 50 to 59, 60 to 69, etc. Right? When it came about to actually creating a histogram, you had to use the boundaries in particular, because okay, just give me a second. All right, sorry about that. So what I was saying, I collect data in the class intervals 50 to 59, but when I have to draw my histogram, I have to use the limits, not the boundaries, the limits to create my histogram. Okay? It sounds very confusing. Very, 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 very confusing. But I just want to create one piece of clarity, and that is because your histogram has to have bars that are connected, you use the limits on your x-axis to draw the bars of the histogram. All right. So the first thing that essentially should be done before we do anything at all would be to identify our class boundaries, yes, but obtain the limits for each respective class. And when we do that, you'd realize that the lower class boundary of the next class is the upper class boundary of the previous one. So in other words, to obtain my limits, I want you all to look here. You notice the upper class limit of the first class interval is 59.5. You all see that? We all see that? Nice. So the next thing is that my lower class limit for 60 to 69 is the 59.5 as well. So that's how you get that connectedness between your bars and your histogram. It's not just because we decide, okay, we're going to put all the bars stick up on each other, right? There's a reason behind everything you do. And I want you all to know this much when you study maths. Sometimes things don't necessarily make sense to you and it seems like extra and whatnot. But in mathematics, there is a logical reason behind everything. And there is some sort of knowledge that you can gain from all these little bits and pieces that seem like unnecessary extra information. All right. So whenever you have to do your histogram, I want you all to always remember, obtain your class limits, the upper and the lower class limits, before you create your histogram. So earlier, when you all saw what I was doing, all right, remember, start off with the limits. All right. So for all the people who did your histograms, you all did them quite lovely. It's just that one little piece of information that has to be changed, which is using the limits. All right. Because like I said, I know that out on the internet, every tutorial, every bit of information about creating a histogram on a site, they all use the boundaries rather than the limits, and you're supposed to use your limits. Okay. So next thing that I want to point out before I cut off, because you all may have another class soon, and I don't want to keep you all too long, is this. Once you're able to identify the boundary, finding the limit is just simply subtracting 0.5. So if I want to get the lower class limit for my first class, my lower class limit will be 50 take away 0.5, and that's how I get 49.5. If I want to get the upper class limit, I will say 59 plus 0.5, and that will give me 59.5. So lower class limits, subtract the 0.5. Upper class limits, add the 0.5. Everybody remembers doing something of the sort? Anybody? Because I know Jewel mentioned that that's how she knows how to do it, which is good, because that's essentially what you're supposed to do. But anybody else recalls that much?
Me.
Yay! So we have two people who remember. So for those of you who probably don't remember, okay, nice. So for all of us, by the time we're finished with histogram, I want you all to remember to take away the following things. Your histograms bars will always be connected, and to create that connection, you have to use your limits rather than your class boundaries. To obtain the class boundaries, remember, for the lower class, I keep saying boundaries. LRL, sorry, I just fed up, tired. Anyway, rectifying that. When I want to get my class limits to create my histogram, I will take the boundary, the lower class boundary, and subtract 0.5, and that will give me my lower limit. When I want to get the upper limits, I will look at my upper class boundary and I will add 0.5. All right. So the idea is just that 0.5. Lower one, subtract, upper one, add. Simple?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So as soon as I finish doing this document, they're going to be up on Google Classroom. As soon as I finish do the edits for the video, again, same thing, Google Classroom. All right. Any questions before we leave?
I suppose any questions to do.
Yes, I will post up some. I wouldn't post too many. I'll probably put like 3 just for practice. And the notes will also include instructions to get your mode from your histogram, and it will also include the histograph / frequency polygon. All right. So everything will be coming soon to Google Classroom. So make sure that you are on Google Classroom. And before you leave, make sure that I do have you as present if you've been present. All right. Anything else?
No, ma'am.
No. All right. Have a lovely day, people. It's nice and rainy, and we're almost done with classes for the day. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye, miss.
Bye, miss.
Bye, miss.
Bye.
Bye, miss.
Bye, Lindsay.
Lindsay is present.
I know. No, I'll put your absent, Lindsay. Bye, Shemaya.